What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And as always, we have ourselves a jam-packed show as we have lots of volleyball to discuss, such as the VNL Men's Championship has been concluded. Who is your new VNL champion? I can already tell you, it's a new champion, and there are a lot of twists and turns when it came to the knockout round. And how about the Maestrinis girls? They win their third AVP Tour championship as they were able to dominate the Atlantic City Open. Were they able to do it with ease, or was it a little bumpy along the way? And it's been a hot minute since I discussed an NCAA women's volleyball schedule breakdown, as I've got 3 of them for you all. And they're big-time teams as well. Who are they? And what teams will I be discussing? And what will the schedule be like? Hand me a volleyball. Set up to them, because I'm about to serve you up some volleyball action here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome one, welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for tuning in on this beautiful Monday afternoon, Monday evening, Monday, wherever you are listening from. It really means a lot. Without any further delay, let's get on into that volleyball action. But first and foremost, we have a word from our sponsor. IE Sports Radio is proud to call the Southern California Warriors the official sponsor of IE Sports Radio. The world of semi-pro sports is unlike any other sports organization. Players pay to play in hopes of so many different outcomes, whether it's playing to try out for professional teams, big-time colleges, or just playing to stay in shape. No matter what, all semi-pro players have one thing in common, and that's playing for the love of the game. The SoCal Warriors have been on a quest to earn titles and give players second chances since 2017. Whether you're in Southern California or anywhere in the world, give semi-pro sports a chance if you love your sport. You may get that second chance you've been waiting for as an athlete. You can follow them on Twitter at SoCal Warriors, on Instagram at Southern California_Warriors, and on Facebook by typing in the word Southern California then Warriors in the search bar. IE Sports Radio is available to you on Twitter and on Instagram at IE Sports Radio, on TikTok at IE Sports Radio, and on Facebook by going to the search bar and typing in the word IE then Sports then Radio. And when you go to the IE Sports Radio's website, www.iesportsradio.com, you will see a Patreon link at the top, and it'll start off, once you click it, at $5 a month once you pretty much subscribe to it. This will get you a shout-out from all 28 of our shows, and other higher tiers will include IE Sports Radio merchandise, access to IESRU, the podcasting university of IE Sports Radio, and even a chance to be featured on IE Sports Radio's segment of their flagship show, The Defining Moment, with Larry B. Because for the past 8 years and counting, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, such as the one that I had last week, and other authorized media personnel, such as the one that I had 2 weeks ago, and building tailor-made shows all over the country. All the while, IE Sports Radio has been continuing to be by the fans and for the fans, and with your help, we are ready to take the next biggest step. Thank you to everyone for all of your support and for help making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that sports, dedicating themselves to building tailor-made shows to all major sports cities around the country. Shout out to our Patreon supporters, Bay Area Raised Apparel, Marcus Great, Key to the Gate, and a donor that is anonymous. And big shout out to our fan of the month, Justin Ekstrom, a Minnesota Vikings fan hailing from the Great Lakes of Minnesota. And with that being said, let's get on into the volleyball action. So, like I said, it's been a while since I've done a NCAA women's volleyball schedule breakdown, and we've got 3 on deck, and they're big-time teams that I'm going to schedule breakdown. The first one will be Penn State's women's volleyball team. Just because Penn State is obviously one of the more legendary programs. And unfortunately, Russ Rose has departed. He has retired after heaven knows how many years he's been as head coach. So now they start a new era when it comes to the Penn State women's volleyball era, as now they enter the Katie Schumacher-Colley era. Yes, Katie Schumacher-Colley era. And starting off, Penn State will be opening up its season on its home floor in the Penn State Invitational. They start off by facing Connecticut, which I imagine is going to be UConn. Everyone likes to call them Connecticut, but most people will just call them UConn. And then that's on August 26th. Then on August 27th, Penn State will play Loyola of Maryland, and they'll also play West Virginia. On September 2nd, they'll be hitting the road to the Bayou for the Tiger Challenge at LSU, as they'll play Iowa State and Troy on September 2nd. And then on September 3rd, Penn State will play host LSU. Then they'll head down to the Great Lakes of Minnesota for the Big Ten Pac-12 Challenge, as September 9th, Penn State will play Stanford, and September 10th, Penn State will play Oregon. September 9th and 10th are Friday, Saturday, respectively. Then Penn State returns back to Rec Hall for its Penn State Classic, as they play Howard on September 16th, and then on September 17th, they have a doubleheader as they play Albany, then Coastal Carolina. And that's that for their non-conference schedule. Jumping into their Big Ten schedule, they have a home game against Indiana, which that shouldn't be too difficult. Nothing against Indiana, but honestly, it's Indiana. I don't think they're going to be too threatening to Penn State. Now, the day after could be quite the matchup, as Penn State hosts Michigan on September 24th. And it's looking like Penn State could be 2-0 in conference play. But then it starts to get a little bit of an upstake in terms of the talent level, as Penn State hits the road to Wisconsin to play the Badgers, the reigning NCAA women's volleyball champion, on September 30th, which is actually the 3-year anniversary of Set Point, so mark your calendars for September 30th. Then on October 2nd, Penn State returns home to play Michigan State. And then 5 days after, October 7th, Penn State hits the road to Ohio State. And then after that, on October 9th, Penn State will be playing Illinois at Rec Hall. And then following that, there will be a 3-game road trip for the Nittany Lions, as October 14th, they are on the road against Nebraska. October 15th, they're on the road against Iowa. And then on October 21st, Penn State is at Maryland. Penn State will return home to Rec Hall on October 23rd to play Rutgers. And then 3 days after, October 26th, they will be on the road against Illinois. Then following their matchup against the Fighting Illini, they will be at home against Ohio State. Then kicking off the month of November, they are at home against Maryland. So that's their 2-game homestand in a nutshell. Then they have another 3-game road trip starting on November 6th, when they hit the road to play Rutgers. And then November 11th and 12th, they are in the Hoosier State as they play Indiana on the 11th and Purdue on the 12th. Then Penn State returns home for a 2-game homestand. However, this is going to be a tough 2-game homestand, as they play Minnesota on November 18th, and then they play Wisconsin again on November 19th. That could have some Big Ten implications. Then on November 23rd, Penn State hits the road to the Windy City to take on Northwestern, which is Chicago. And then closing out the season, Penn State is at home against the Boilermakers of Purdue. So looking at Purdue's schedule overall, or not Purdue's schedule overall, Penn State's schedule overall, Penn State's non-conference schedule doesn't really scream too much big time. Other than Stanford and Oregon, they don't have any teams that made the NCAA tournament. Oregon obviously made the NCAA tournament, and Stanford made the NCAA tournament. But none of these other teams really made the tournament. Like, UConn had a good season, and then they made the the NIT equivalent of NCAA women's volleyball, but they didn't win it. And then, again, the other teams didn't make the NCAA tournament. I want to say I don't think Iowa State made the tournament, but overall, it's not really the biggest, it's not like Ohio State's schedule, non-conference schedule, where it screams gauntlet all over the place, and that right there is a gauntlet. But Penn State's schedule, in terms of its non-conference schedule, is not necessarily the best. It's not the worst. And actually, Ohio State did make the NCAA tournament. They actually lost to Stanford in the round of 64. So Penn State does have some NCAA tournament teams, but none that made it past the round of 32. So for Penn State, it's kind of it should be smooth sailing for the most part, but once they hit that Pac-12 Big Ten challenge, they are going to be in for a little bit of a rough ride. So just because Stanford does return a huge chunk of its team, and then Oregon has a lot to prove from last year after they got swept in the first round of the NCAA tournament by Kansas of all teams. Ooh. So overall, I think Penn State should have a good year. I think they could make the NCAA tournament. However, I don't know if they'll be vying for the Big Ten championship, because you have Wisconsin, which is good, which is just as good. They're not going to be as good as they were last year. Then you have Nebraska, which returns a plethora of its players last year, and also they have a great freshman class coming in. You can't go wrong with that. Illinois is improved. Ohio State is the projected favorite of possibly winning the conference. Minnesota is up there. Purdue, despite losing a few players to graduation, they're going to be up there. So Penn State's kind of got its work cut out for them. I think they can knock off those teams that I just mentioned, at least one or two of them, but it's going to be tough to consistently beat those teams on a nightly basis, especially since they have some of these 3-game road trips. And then that 2-game homestand with Minnesota and Wisconsin isn't going to be easy either. I know it's their only matchup against Minnesota, but it's still kind of going to be a brutal matchup. So that's that for Penn State's women's volleyball schedule. I am looking forward to their season. I think they have the potential. It's just that, I don't know. I don't think they're going to be as explosive as they were in years past. I do definitely think Katie Schumacher-Colley is going to guide the Nittany Lions in the right direction, but I think it's going to take a little bit of time before they scream NCAA women's volleyball contender. Like, there's no way they're going to drop out of the top 25 unless they start losing left and right. Then we have ourselves problems. So that's that for Penn State's women's volleyball team. We're going to jump back into the Pac-12, a.k.a. the future Big Ten team, as I'll be previewing UCLA's women's volleyball schedule, or breaking it down. So UCLA is hitting the road to Logan, which is a city in Utah, as they'll be playing Utah State in its season opener on August 26th. And then following that, UCLA will be playing a Southern California, I wouldn't call them a neighbor, but they'll be playing a Southern California interstate team, as they'll be playing Cal Poly the day after. And then UCLA will be hitting the road to Honolulu for the Hawaii tournament. Starting on September 1st, they'll be playing West Virginia. That should be a decent matchup. Like, West Virginia is slightly underrated. Like, they definitely want to get better just because the Big 12 is, always a contending conference. It's a Power 5 conference. But it should be a sneaky good matchup. The day after should also be sneaky good, as UCLA will be playing Texas State. Now, Texas State is that perennial powerhouse team from the Sun Belt Conference. I really think Texas State can prove itself this year. They lose players to graduation, but they always reload, and I feel they are not going anywhere when it comes to the Sun Belt Conference. And they could possibly challenge UCLA, but notice the word possibly and challenge. I'm not going to hold my breath and say Texas State is going to beat UCLA. No, not even close. And then UCLA closes out the Hawaii Invitational when they play host Hawaii on September 4th, a Sunday. So it'll be good to see Hawaii play that Power 5 school. And Hawaii does have a decent chunk of its returnees from last year. And also, I think Hawaii to me is always that good team in terms of NCAA women's volleyball. I think they've only had a few down years, and I feel that Hawaii is back to dominating. Like, they're for sure going to dominate in the Big West, but I'm sure they're at least going to get to the round of 32. The round of 32, if not the Sweet 16. But I'm not talking about Hawaii. I'm talking about UCLA. Back to the Bruins. They will be hitting the road to San Jose for the San Jose State tournament as they play LMU on September 9th, which I think can be a little underrated. LMU had themselves a decent season last year. They won a bunch of games. However, they didn't have any standout wins. I'll be interested to see if the Lions can top the Bruins, but I probably would pick the Bruins. And then UCLA plays host San Jose State on September 10th, the day after. Jumping over to the San Diego showdown, as UCLA will be hitting the road to San Diego State to take on the Aztecs on Thursday, September 15th. Then on Friday, September 16th, they'll be playing the University of San Diego. So between the two San Diego schools, San Diego, the Toreros, made the NCAA tournament but lost in the first round. Last year, the Toreros coincidentally beat UCLA in 5 sets, as that actually wound up being UCLA's first loss of the season. So I'm sure some of UCLA's players will have a chip on their shoulder seeing the Toreros again. My big question for the San Diego-UCLA matchup is, who's going to be the one that steps up? Obviously, no Shelby Martin, no Mac May for UCLA, and no Katie Lukes for San Diego. But I'm fairly certain we're going to have other players step up for the Toreros and Bruins. Again, I expect UCLA to have a chip on their shoulder, but don't sleep on the Toreros. The Toreros have decent players. And then UCLA, following that matchup against the Toreros, will be back home at Pauley Pavilion for its first home game of the season as they play rival USC on September 22nd. Then following that matchup, the Bruins get another big matchup as they play Washington in Pauley Pavilion on September 25th, which is a Sunday. I'll get to your question in a little bit, John Felipe. By the way, shout out to the chat room, Adam Karnick, Mike Pat, and John Felipe. Thank you all for tuning in to the live chat on Spreaker. But back to UCLA's schedule. So UCLA will be playing Utah on September 30th, a Friday. And then 2 days after, UCLA plays Colorado at Pauley Pavilion. So they get a 4-game homestand when it comes to Pac-12 play, to kick off Pac-12 play, after not playing a home game in its conference schedule. I think that's kind of interesting how Mike Seeley devised that schedule. Obviously, you don't want to get too comfortable with playing at home, but at the same time, your team needs to be battle-tested on the road. Following the matchup against Colorado, UCLA hits the road to Arizona to take on the Arizona schools on October 7th and 9th. UCLA will play Arizona State, and then they'll play the Wildcats of Arizona. UCLA then returns back to Pauley Pavilion to take on the Oregon schools on October 14th and 16th as they play Oregon State and Oregon. And then UCLA will remain in California. However, they will be playing in NorCal, as this will be a start of a 4-game road trip, as UCLA hits the road to Palo Alto to take on Stanford, which that should be a great matchup. Like last year, UCLA beat Stanford in their one and only meeting of the season, and I thought it was a real barn burner. It was real resilient that UCLA came back from 2 sets down to stun the Cardinal. I wouldn't say stun is the correct word, but it was still a very impressive win for the Bruins nonetheless. And then UCLA closes out its 2-game roadie in NorCal as they take on Cal on October 23rd. Then UCLA turns it around as they head up to the Rocky Mountains starting on October 28th to take on Colorado. And then 2 days after, UCLA heads up to Salt Lake City to take on the Utes of Utah. Then UCLA returns for a 4-game homestand as starting on November 4th, they welcome Arizona to the Pauley Pavilion. And then on November 6th, UCLA welcomes Arizona State. Then on November 10th, which is a Thursday, UCLA welcomes Cal, and then UCLA will be playing Stanford at Pauley Pavilion on Sunday, November 13th. Now, it's great to see UCLA playing Stanford twice this season. That right there is entertaining volleyball right there. I really cannot wait to see what UCLA can do against or against Stanford and vice versa. I really think UCLA has that potential, and I think Stanford's going to be really good this year. I imagine Stanford should be the favorite to win the Pac-12. Don't quote me on it. I'm not making predictions just yet, but yeah. So then, that matchup against Stanford is actually UCLA's final home game of the regular season, as UCLA will be hitting the road for its last four games, starting with the Oregon schools on November 18th and 20th, as UCLA plays Oregon and Oregon State. And then on November 22nd, UCLA hits the road to Pullman to play Washington State. And then finally, UCLA closes out the regular season on the road at Galen Center when they play USC, the day after Thanksgiving. So looking at UCLA's schedule, obviously the Pac-12 is a gauntlet, but jumping back to its non-conference schedule, it has some decent teams. It has 2 teams that made the NCAA tournament, being Hawaii, well, actually 3, Texas State, Hawaii, and San Diego. And then they also have the underrated team that is Loyola Marymount. But, Cal Poly didn't make the NCAA tournament. I was thinking they did, but that was like 3 years ago. But anyway, other than that, doesn't really scream. Again, it's not the worst non-conference schedule, but it maybe could have been better, but I can't really judge just because I'm not a schedule maker, or I'm not an athletic director, or I'm not a schedule maker or sports information director. Either way, I think UCLA is going to have a big season. They have really good players such as Charity Looper returning. That's just one of many talented players for UCLA this year. I really think that the Bruins can have a great season. Last year they made it all the way to the Sweet 16 where they lost to the eventual champion, Wisconsin. But I think there's some high hopes for UCLA despite the departure of Mac May, who was basically Miss Volleyball at UCLA. So John Felipe asked this question, alright, as a new fan of volleyball, who should I be rooting for? Who are the top dogs of volleyball? Well, for starters, Wisconsin is one of the top dogs, and then Nebraska is probably the promising team this year. Louisville should be up there. I know you're a Carolina guy, John Felipe. North Carolina has a decent women's volleyball team, so I'd probably go with them. South Carolina doesn't have too bad of a volleyball team, so maybe you can go with them. Maybe veer away from ECU and Duke, because I don't think they're the best volleyball teams when it comes to the Carolinas. But if for your sake, being a Carolina guy, North Carolina or South Carolina. Now, if you're just wanting to be I wouldn't say bandwagoner, but if you're just rooting for the top dog, I'd probably say Wisconsin, Nebraska, maybe Stanford. It depends on your taste of volleyball teams and players and whatnot, and volleyball style. Either way, I just want to answer John Felipe's question. Decent question. So he says, so Carolina it is. Yeah, North Carolina or South Carolina. Just because those two have decent volleyball programs. So that's going to do it for UCLA's schedule. Now we'll jump into the final team to preview its NCAA women's volleyball schedule. And that would be UCLA's crosstown rival, USC. So USC opens up its... Well, actually, I should probably talk a little about USC. So USC, Southern California, did not make the NCAA tournament, despite finishing with a 500 record and despite beating UCLA in its final game of the regular season. But that was the only team it wound up beating of noteworthiness. Yes, they beat Colorado, but they didn't really have too many standout wins after that, or other than that. So UCLA was their only decent win, and that was clearly not enough to get them into the NCAA tournament, as they didn't beat a team when it comes to... How do I explain this? They didn't beat a team whose RPI was like 90, was like in the top 90. I want to say it was like that, but either way, USC didn't have hardly any standout wins. They had a tough schedule, yes, but what good is a tough schedule if you don't have any wins that are standout-ish? So to USC's women's volleyball schedule, they open up the season in the Cardinal and Gold Classic at Galen Center against Colgate on Friday, August 26th. Then the day after, they have a doubleheader. They have UMBC and Villanova. Then USC hits the road to Creighton for the Blue Jay Invitational starting on Friday, September 2nd. They have a doubleheader when they face Northern Iowa. And then in the second part of the doubleheader, USC plays Creighton. So the Creighton matchup, for those of you that remember, USC had Creighton on the ropes. USC was down 0-2. They came back to force the fifth set. USC was up 13-10. They had Creighton on the ground as they were ready to step on their throats. But Creighton, being the talented team that they were, scored 5 straight points to break the hearts of USC. Anyway, so USC then will play Kentucky in the final match of the Blue Jay Invitational. So yeah, that Kentucky team is going to be as potent as always, just because Kentucky is only 1 year removed from being the NCAA champion. Then USC hits the road to Honolulu for a double dip when they play Hawaii. They call it the annual Hawaii trip, which you couldn't have picked a better name for that. You couldn't have picked like the Hawaii Challenge or the Hawaii Tournament or the Hawaii Double Dip. Either way, USC is playing Hawaii on Friday, September 9th and Saturday, September 10th. Then USC returns home for the Trojan Challenge, another USC tournament, as they play New Mexico State on Thursday, September 15th, then Milwaukee, September 16th, a Friday, and then they play San Jose State on Sunday, September 18th. So overall, looking at the schedule already, that's not really the best schedule. Yes, it has the 2 Hawaii schools. Well, actually, no, I shouldn't say that. Like, the Creighton, Kentucky, and Hawaii matchups are very good matchups. All 3 of those teams made it out of the first round. That's the good news. The bad news is they wound up losing in the round of 32, which I guess isn't bad, but still. And then I want to say UMBC was the team that made it. I want to say UMBC made it to the NCAA tournament. I'm just going to double check it right now, but UMBC, they finished 19. They had 19 wins, which is quite impressive. And they actually did make the NCAA tournament. However, they lost to Pitt. I sound very harsh when saying that, but yeah, UMBC made the NCAA tournament. However, their tournament was short-lived when they lost to Pitt at Pitt. So jumping back to USC schedule, USC, as I alluded to, they open up Pac-12 conference play on the road at Pauley Pavilion when they take on UCLA. So playing at Hawaii should toughen up the Trojans, and also playing at Creighton should toughen them up as well. Playing at Hawaii is a much bigger atmosphere, though. Like, when you play at Hawaii, there's just volleyball fans all over the place. They're not just cheering for Hawaii, they're also just cheering for volleyball in general, just because Hawaii is a big volleyball state. It really is, especially when it comes to men's volleyball. But for UCLA, you can't go wrong with the USC-UCLA rivalry, as it doesn't get much bigger than that. And it's your conference opener, so you're either going to be starting off 1-0 or 0-1. Then USC returns home for a 3-game homestand starting on Saturday, September 24th when they play Washington State. Then on Friday, September 30th and Sunday, October 2nd, they welcome the Rocky Mountain schools, Colorado and Utah. Then USC hits the road for the Arizona school road trip as USC plays Arizona on Friday, October 7th, and then they play Arizona State on Sunday, October 9th. Then USC heads back home for a 2-game homestand as they welcome the Oregon schools, Oregon and Oregon State, on Friday, October 14th and Sunday, October 16th, respectively. Then USC hits the road for a 4-game road trip, kind of like UCLA, as USC plays at Cal on Friday, October 21st. Then they play at Stanford on Sunday, October 23rd. Then USC hits the road following its NorCal trip as they play at Utah on Friday, October 28th, and then they play Colorado on Sunday, October 30th. Then USC they have a 4-game homestand as they play the Arizona schools on Friday, November 4th and Sunday, November 6th, respectively. And then they play Stanford on Thursday, November 10th, and Cal on Saturday, November 12th. I'm hoping to make the Stanford matchup against USC just because I have a few friends that play on USC and Stanford, and I really want to see that matchup, and I don't know if I'll be able to catch any other USC matchups. Well, getting to Galen Center is kind of tough, especially for me when I take the bus, but I will persevere. And then USC, like I said, they close out the homestand against Cal on Saturday, November 12th. Then USC has another 3-game road trip as USC plays at Oregon State on Friday, November 18th. Then they play at Oregon on Sunday, November 20th. Then USC closes out its final road game of the season as they play Washington on Wednesday, November 23rd. And then the day after Thanksgiving, USC plays UCLA on Friday, November 25th. So for USC, in order to make the NCAA tournament, they're going to need to pull out some wins against some of these big-time teams. Now, it can't just boil down to beating UCLA on the final day of the season. It just won't work like that. I don't think USC gets into the tournament just by beating UCLA alone. They have to beat some of the other teams that are like ranked. I imagine we'll see Washington ranked, Stanford ranked, Washington State ranked, Oregon ranked, and Utah ranked. USC has to beat those schools. And then I imagine we'll see Hawaii kind of ranked. They'll probably be receiving votes. We'll definitely see Creighton ranked, and we'll for sure probably see Kentucky ranked. Other than that, that's USC's schedule in a nutshell. They're going to look to try to make the NCAA tournament after missing it the past 2 seasons. I thought last year should have been a prime opportune time to make the NCAA tournament, just because they had talented players such as Brooke Botkin and Shannon Scully, who was rotating between libero and outside hitter. But I think USC has a promising team. I think the Trojans can make the NCAA tournament. How deep they can go into the NCAA tournament, it all depends. But for USC, I really think they have that potential. It's just all about beating the teams that are, I wouldn't say better than you, but that are like highly ranked. Well, not like highly ranked, but they have to like beat the teams that they're supposed to beat. If they can do so, they're golden when it comes to make the NCAA tournament. If they can't, then it's another season where they're not going to be making the NCAA tournament. I'm certain that Brad Keller has them heading into the right direction. They are doing great things, so if I'm a USC women's volleyball fan, I'm definitely getting excited for the season. I really think USC has the potential to finishing probably in the top 5 of the Pac-12. Does top 5 guarantee them a spot in the NCAA tournament? It all depends. It all depends on USC's body of work and how many teams the NCAA tournament is willing to take when it comes to the Pac-12. That's because the Pac-12 always has a bunch of good teams making the tournament left and right. So that is going to do it for the NCAA Women's Volleyball Breakdown, and as well as USC's Women's Volleyball Schedule Breakdown. So let us take ourselves a quick little breaky break. When we come back, I've got some AVP to recap, as I've got the Atlantic Open to recap, and then we have the VNL Men's Championship to recap, and then we have some NCAA Men's Volleyball news, as we have a changing of the guard at one NCAA Men's Volleyball Division I school. Keep it locked here. You are listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Before we get into the commercial, Adam Karnick says, John, the correct answer is beach. As in, the team that you should be rooting for is beach volleyball. Just because Adam Karnick is a big beach volleyball fan, which is funny. But anyway, we'll be heading to a commercial break. We'll be right back after this. You're listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Karnick, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What is going on, everybody? My name is Harrison Glazer, and we're coming at you from the Show That Never Sleeps podcast. I cover the Jets, the Islanders, the Nets, and the Yankees.
This is Pierre Moss, and I cover the Mets, Knicks, Rangers, and the Giants.
Our show is live every Wednesday through Spreaker and a bunch of other ways to get our content. Again, we're the Show That Never Sleeps podcast. We talk about all those New York sports. It's a lot of fun. We get into all of it. Please tune in. Again, that's Wednesdays at 6 p.m.
And we look forward to having you guys right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's up, sports fans? Are you looking for the latest on Northern California sports? Then take a trip out west with me, your host, Gina G, on Reppin' the NorCal Sports, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. I'll be bringing it to you all the way live every Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. And it's always a packed show. I'll bring you everything Dynastic 49ers, the bite of the San Jose Sharks, torture of the San Francisco Giants, the Golden State Warriors that we still believe. Then take you across the bay to the rise and grind of the Oakland A's. I've got you covered on college ball from the Cal Bears to the Stanford Cardinal, so that no matter what, Reppin' in NorCal Sports is always reppin' the Bay. So if you bleed red and gold, or you're looking to keep an eye out west in them thar hills, don't miss me, Gina G, on Reppin' in NorCal Sports. Catch me every Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, and I'll have your fandom repped harder than a trio of defenders guarding Stephen Curry before his buzzer beater is Gucci.
Back with segment number 2 of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Definitely do check out all of our shows. Chi-Town Weekly with Adam Karnick, which goes on 1 hour before Set Point goes live. The Show That Never Sleeps with Harrison Glazer and Pierre Moss, which goes on every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific Time, 8 p.m. Eastern. And then the one that we just heard, Reppin' to NorCal Sports with Gina G, it'll be on every Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Pacific Time. Temporarily, of course. Also, you did hear that play drop. That was Gina G's drop. I would like to extend my condolences to Gina G and her family as her father, Art, peacefully passed away yesterday. He passed away at around 4 p.m. Pacific Time, and he was a fighter. And I didn't know Art, but honestly, he sounded like an amazing person. He was a diehard San Francisco Giants fan. He was a diehard San Francisco 49ers fan. He raised an amazing daughter in Gina, and Gina being one of Set Point's diehard supporters, we would like to extend our condolences to Gina G, who saw her father pass away peacefully yesterday. So Gina, you and your family are in our thoughts and prayers. Art was an amazing person, and he's no longer in pain, and he'll be watching the San Francisco 49ers and San Francisco Giants in the best seat in the house. And he'll be also listening to you do your thing up in the heavens. So my condolences to Gina G, one of Set Point's top supporters, and you're in my thoughts and prayers, as well as your family. Jumping back into the volleyball side of things, let's recap some AVP that happened yesterday. Well, that happened yesterday and Saturday. So, we just had the Atlantic Open just recently come and go, as while we were all focused on the VNL, we kind of forgot about the AVP, but the Tour Series did happen when it came to the AVP, as the Atlantic Open happened on Saturday and Sunday, and in the end, Team Maestrinis, Lily, and Larissa and Lily were the ones that came out on top. They won their third AVP Tour Championship, as the Maestrini girls topped Tegan Van Gunst and Aurora Davis in the final, 21-16, 21-15. The Maestrini girls were really dominant in this tournament. The Maestrini girls only lost one set in the entire tournament, and that was in the semifinals to Allie Wheeler and Deanna Kraft, as they won the match 18-21, 21-12, and 15-12. I'm not surprised that the Maestrini girls did really well. I really think that they're one of the more underrated pairs when it comes to the AVP. Granted, this is the Tour Series. They're not like the big-time names like Sarah Hughes, Kelly Kolinsky, and then Kelly Clace and her partner, Team Tiger with Taryn Cloth and Kristen Nuss, and all those other top players. But the Maestrini girls are vastly underrated, and I think they are a great duo. And the unique thing about them is, and I kind of already alluded to it, was that they're wife and wife. I'm just going to leave it at that. So I really think it's cool that Larissa and Lily are both really doing well when it comes to the AVP, and they're making their names well known. And you can't hate on any on winning a tournament in the AVP. Winning a tournament in the AVP is no laughing matter. I really think it's very difficult to win a tournament when it comes to the AVP, just because you have to have so much strength and stamina, and you're playing in the heat, and overall it's just really tough. And once you get to that semifinals, you cannot lose again. Now, you could lose in the winners bracket, and you could head down to the contenders bracket, but other than that, you just have to have that level of consistency of being the best you can be. Now, I understand the Maestrini girls were the top seed overall when it came to this tournament, but you still have that target on your back, and you've already won 2 AVP tournaments. Obviously, the third time is the charm, as it's in the title name, but the Maestrini girls are really making a name well known for them in the AVP Tour Series. So I'm excited to see what the Maestrini girls have to offer, and I'm interested to see if they'll be able to win another AVP tournament. In the Tour Series, I could see them winning another tournament. I don't think a whole lot of pairs can really touch Larissa and Lily. If anything, it would have to be like Gina Yarongo and Julia Scholes as a prime example. But other than that, no one is touching the Maestrini girls on the Tour Series. The Pro Series could be another story, but honestly, I'm not going to look that far. Like, I don't even know if the Maestrini girls are going to be in the next tournament of the AVP, of course. So, as for the runners-up, Tegan Van Gust and Aurora Davis, they swept their semifinal matchup quite nicely, as honestly, I didn't think they would actually win with the greatest of ease. Granted, obviously, they did well. I'm going to say that right there. They swept Katie Dickens and Jennifer Ketty, but honestly, I didn't think they would win that easily. They won 21-16, 21-17, but they just ran into a buzzsaw when it came to the Maestrini girls. It doesn't mean that they're not good. I just think that they just kind of ran into this brick wall that is the Maestrini girls. So it's great to see new names like pop out of nowhere as, well, okay, I wouldn't say out of nowhere, but Van Gust and Davis were both names I hadn't really heard of. And something unique about Van Gust and Davis is that they actually had to win their way through the contenders bracket. They actually lost in the final of the winners bracket, as they lost, ironically enough, to the Maestrini girls. And then they actually were able to win their way in the final of the contenders bracket in 3 sets, 21-19, 18-21, and 15-12. And then, like I said, they swept their way through the semifinals, but then lost to the Maestrini girls in the final. So, overall, like I said, it's more so the Maestrini girls being really good than it was of Van Gust and Davis not being good. I think Van Gust and Davis have a lot to be proud of, placing second and losing to a very talented Maestrini girl pair. So, overall, I think Team Maestrini is just continuing its dominance when it comes to the AVP Tour Series. Jumping over to the men's side of things of the Atlantic Open. So the Atlantic Open on the men's side was just really good. It was really good, as the number 1 seed didn't even make it to the final. Yes, I'm not kidding. The men's side of things was so wide open. I really thought that it was very wide open. I didn't even know which pair would come out on top. Like, I didn't really get a chance to see the participants just because, again, I was busy, and then obviously I didn't get a chance to look at it. And when I do this show on Monday, I don't get any information when it comes to the tournaments, as the number 1 seed was Roberto Rodriguez and Dave Palm, and they unfortunately didn't even make the semifinals. So the winner of the Atlantic City Open on the men's side was actually Cody Caldwell and David Lee. Now, I actually had the honor of seeing Cody Caldwell play volleyball in high school at Newport Harbor High. So, and he's also the younger brother of Kyle Caldwell, and he's also the grandson of the late George Yardley, or I should say George the Bird Yardley. So Caldwell and Lee, believe it or not, now it's actually their first ever AVP championship on any series, as, like I said, they swept Avery Drost and Chase Frischman 21-15, 21-18. I actually know Avery Drost as well, and I was disappointed to see, no matter who would come out on top, I'd be disappointed for the other pair. Obviously, Avery Drost is trying to improve his AVP game, just because he's also a head boys volleyball coach at Miracosta High School, but he's also trying to establish a name in the AVP. And then Cody Caldwell, I think he's around my age. I think he's like 29 or 28 or 30. He is also improving as he's basically jumping into the AVP scene, and for him and his partner to win is quite astounding. What else is astounding is that Cody Caldwell and David Lee were actually the 10 seed. Now, something to note when it comes to seeds is that if you're 1 through 8 seed, you get a bye from the first round of the winner's bracket all the way into the quarterfinals. If you're seeded 9th through 24th, you automatically have to play in the first round of the winner's bracket. And then there's also the qualifiers, which, don't get me started, we're not going to get started on that rabbit hole, but for Cody Caldwell and David Lee, they actually had to play in the first round, as they were able to win their way with ease, with the grace of ease, as they swept their first round matchup 21-17, 21-15, and then Caldwell outlasted the number 7 seed in 3 sets, 20-22, 21-18, 15-12, and then Caldwell and Lee managed to win their way through the semifinals of the winner's bracket, and then they eventually won their way through the finals of the winner's bracket. Then jumping over to the men's final, they actually defeated Timothy Brewster and Taylor Friend. Believe it or not, Taylor Friend is actually from the same area as Cody Caldwell is, Newport Beach. I want to say that they actually went to school together, but I'm not entirely... Don't quote me on that. I think Taylor Friend graduated a year when Cody Caldwell first enrolled at the high school, but I'm getting off topic here. So, back to Cody Caldwell and David Lee beating Timothy Brewster and Taylor Friend. They won the match 13-21, 21-17, and 15-9. And then eventually, Caldwell and Lee beat Avery Drost and Chase Frischman in the final, 21-15 and 21-18. So overall, it was an impressive showing for Cody Caldwell and David Lee. I really didn't think that they would actually win the tournament. I was thinking, well, Avery Drost is long overdue for an AVP championship with his partner. And I'm pretty sure, I was thinking that they were going to win, but part of me, being the Newport Harbor homer, thought that Cody Caldwell was going to ride the wave of momentum. As, believe it or not, Cody Caldwell and David Lee did not lose a match, despite being the number 10 seed. Like, they were able to pull off upset after upset after upset. It really is quite astounding, if you ask me, and it goes to show that, once again, anything can happen when it comes to the AVP, and no one is safe. No one. Let me tell you. Not even the number 2 seed. The number 2 seed being Cian Cook and Logan Weber lost to Cody Caldwell and David Lee in the quarterfinals of the winner's bracket. Actually, semifinals of the winner's bracket. And then eventually, the number 3 seed eventually lost to Cody Caldwell and David Lee. The number 3 seed was Andrew Dentler and Skylar Del Sol. So, again, it just goes to show there's lots of parity when it comes to these tour series tournaments. And then the number 1 seed, as I mentioned, Rodriguez and Palm, Dave Palm and Roberto Rodriguez, they lost in the semifinals of the winner's bracket, and eventually they eventually lost to Avery Drost and Chase Frischman in the semifinals of the contenders bracket. So, again, seeds don't matter when it comes to the AVP Tour Series of men's beach volleyball. Anything is possible when it comes to that. No one is safe. Even when Phil Dalhouser is playing in the men's side of things when it comes to the Tour Series. I really think that the Tour Series of the AVP men's side of things is very fun, and it brings out a lot of parity, and it could even bring out the new name when it comes to these pairs, and I really think that it's fun. I really like seeing new pairs win tournaments. I really think that it is great for the sport of the AVP, and it's great for the sport of volleyball, because you never know who's participating. I really think it's a beautiful thing, honestly. So, overall, I enjoyed the Atlantic City Open, especially on the men's side of things. I definitely think Avery Drost and his partner Chase Frischman will eventually win an AVP tournament, whether it's Tour or Pro, but their time will come. Avery Drost, I know, is grinding, trying to improve his game. I think he is not only a talented coach in boys volleyball, but he's also a talented beach volleyball player, and I'm excited to see what Drost's career looks like in the AVP. Even though the AVP and high school boys volleyball season in Southern California can coincide with one another, especially since the AVP was expanded. So there is that right there for the AVP. That is going to do it when it comes to the AVP segment. Before we jump on into the VNL men's side of things, we have some NCAA men's volleyball news. And unfortunately, we don't have a new sound effect for NCAA men's volleyball news. We don't have a news theme, but yes, we have some NCAA men's volleyball news. And it is a changing of the guard at an NCAA men's volleyball team. So, head coach Kevin Ring, the head coach of UC San Diego, has unfortunately been relieved of his coaching duties, or he's not coming back. So he's basically out as the head men's volleyball coach at UC San Diego, which is disappointing. I am kind of heartbroken that he was let go of his position, as this actually happened on July 21st, which was a Thursday, as the press release said, UC San Diego Director of Athletics Earl W. Edwards has announced that Kevin Ring will no longer serve as head coach of the UC San Diego men's volleyball team. Edwards goes on to say, I would like to thank Kevin for 17 years of service as head coach of the men's volleyball program at UC San Diego. We are grateful for his efforts in leading our program through the transition into the highly competitive Big West, and we wish him well in his future endeavors. In addition to Ring stepping down, associate head coach John Gurton will be the interim head coach, and a national search will begin immediately for UC San Diego's men's volleyball program. So, it is unfortunate that Kevin Ring is no longer the head coach after 17 seasons. My goodness. Keep in mind that Kevin Ring is a UC San Diego alum, so the fact that he was let go is kind of head-scratching. I kind of want to wonder what happened. UC San Diego was not bad. You look at last year, they beat Hawaii and Long Beach State in Big West Conference play. Granted, they did lose in the opening round of the Big West Conference tournament, but that doesn't mean it's a bad season. I thought UC San Diego had a fairly decent season. And then the year before, they made it all the way to the Big West Conference finals, where they eventually lost to UC Santa Barbara. That included upsetting number 1 seed Hawaii in 5 sets at Hawaii, mind you. So I'm a little surprised to see Kevin Ring getting the boot, despite 2 solid seasons, which included beating 2 national powerhouses of Hawaii and Long Beach State. So, and believe it or not, that Long Beach State win was actually, I want to say it was the second or third time UC San Diego has beaten Long Beach State in men's volleyball. It's just so mind-boggling that Kevin Ring got the boot. I mean, I understand 13-11 is not great. 5-5 in conference is not great. They could have done a whole lot better when it came to their season, but it's not bad. I mean, again, that Long Beach State win was the first time the Tritons have taken down the Beach since 2012, which, boy howdy, that's a long drought if you ask me. It's just a little... But this is a business. I know I should be defending Kevin Ring just because he's an alum, but it's a business. Like, just like the NFL is a business, just like the NBA is a business, just like all the other sports is a business, men's volleyball is no exception. And unfortunately, Kevin Ring, sadly, will not be coming back as head coach. But I do wish Kevin Ring the best. I think he's a respected coach. I think he can do well with other programs. And I hope UC San Diego does give him his flowers. Just because, you know, being a head coach at your alma mater for 17 years is not easy. Especially when there are other verdant coaching pastures that you want to explore. Or basically, you have other things that come up in your life, like COVID. But either way, I do wish Kevin Ring the best, and I hope he does find a home real soon, whether it's as an assistant coach or as a head coach. Regardless, I think that Kevin Ring will be back as head coach really soon when it comes to any NCAA volleyball program, even if it's with the women. And hopefully he'll just be coaching really soon, just because I hate how this happened, just because the dude poured his heart and soul into this program. But it's all good. It happens, though. So that is going to do it for the NCAA men's volleyball news. Now let's jump on into the VNL men's volleyball side of things. So the men's volleyball side of things when it came to the VNL did not disappoint. It was very fun. So we have to jump on over to Wednesday. So the first quarterfinal was USA versus Brazil. So this was actually a rematch of a round-robin matchup as UCLA defeated Brazil in 4 sets. As the first set, Brazil was able to take it 25-20, and it looked as if Brazil was much better than it was the first go-around. But then the second set, USA was able to squeak by Brazil as they won it 25-22. And then in the third set, USA narrowly won it as they won the third set 25-23 off of an overpass kill from TJ DeFalco. DeFalco was huge when it came to this tournament. And in the fourth set, the U.S. was able to ride the momentum from that third set to win the fourth set 25-17 as they eventually advanced to the semifinals, which was very nice for the U.S. Jumping on over to the other quarterfinal, we had Italy versus Netherlands. So Italy, the second place, well, actually, no, the top team from the round robin matches took on Netherlands, the 8th seed. Netherlands had plans of an upset as they took the first set 25-21, and it looked as if we were kind of going to get an upset alert. However, Italy decided, wait, we actually have to play volleyball, as they won the second set 25-22. Then in the third set, Italy stomped on the Netherlands 25-13. And then the fourth set, it was close, but Italy was able to outlast Netherlands 25-22 to advance to the semifinals on Saturday. Jumping over to the second set of quarterfinals on Thursday, we had France versus Japan. So France was one of the hotter teams in round-robin play, and then they cooled off drastically. But don't tell them that against Japan, as they swept Japan 26-24, 25-16, and 25-20. The first set was probably the turning point for France. If they don't take that first set, Japan is feeling good going into the second set and beyond. But France was able to steal that momentum, run away with it in the second set, and eventually win it in set 3. Final quarterfinal was Poland versus Iran. So on paper, this looks like a complete mismatch. Poland took the first set 25-21, and keep in mind, Poland was the number 1 team in the nation when it came to this whole tournament. However, Iran took a page out of Serbia's book on the women's side, as Iran took the second set 26-24, evening the matchup at 1-1. Then in the third set, Poland responded by taking the third set 25-18, and it looked as if Poland was back on track. However, Iran was able to take the fourth set 25-16, forcing a fifth set in the quarterfinals. But in the end, Poland was able to defeat Iran 15-7 in the fifth set as they would advance to the semifinals of the VNL, where they would take on USA, while France would take on Italy. So something I do need to make note of when it came to Japan was that they were without one of their top players, and I'm trying to find out who that player was, but kind of missing him really hurt Japan. And Japan was one of the more interesting teams going into the VNL this season, as actually the captain of an outside hitter of Japan sprained his ankle in practice, and unfortunately he was unable to play in the quarterfinals as he missed his he sprained his ankle in practice and he missed the quarterfinal, which was a big blow for Japan, as it really sucks, as personally it's not fun to lose your top player in practice. So, especially when he's one of your top players. But overall, I'm sure he'll bounce back bigger and stronger. So, I don't know his first name, but I want to say his name is Yuki. It's something Yuki. Either way, Yuki, I'm going to butcher this guy's name. Yuki Ishikawa. Yuki Ishikawa is his name. So, Yuki Ishikawa hurt his ankle in practice, and losing him is a big blow. I don't know much about Japan and their men's volleyball team, but being the captain and their outside hitter, that really stings. So for Yuki Ishikawa to miss the quarterfinal against a very talented France team is a bummer. So I feel bad for Japan as they were without their captain, but it's the next man up. So jumping to the semifinals, we had Poland versus USA. So USA wasted no time trying to make a statement as they grinded it out in the first set and won it 25-22. Then in the second set, USA was able to squeak their way on winning that set 25-23. Just like that, they were up 2-0 on the number one team in the nation. And the third set, they basically just turned on the gas and basically was on fire as they basically just dominated Poland in that third set 25-13, sweeping Poland and advancing to the VNL final where they would look to achieve their first gold medal. The other semifinal consisted of Italy versus France. France was able to sweep Italy. The first set was 25-22. Then the second set, France was able to take it with a little bit more ease, 25-20. And then the third set, France just used that momentum to just sail away in that third set, 25-15, advancing to its final, where they would take on the U.S. for a gold medal. Jumping on over to the third place match, we had Poland and Italy, because yes, you play for third place. Fight me. Whether you like it or not, you have to play for third place. So Poland was able to sweep Italy 25-16, 25-23, and 25-20. Poland was able to dominate the first set, had a little trouble in that second set, but was able to pull it out. And in the third set, they were able to handle Italy with ease. So jumping on into the final of the U.S. versus France, much like the first meeting, France took the first set 25-16, which was basically how they won the first set, except they won it by one, or they gave up one more point in this matchup. So the second set, I was thinking, okay, well, USA lost the first set. Much like the first matchup, I expect USA to bounce back. It didn't happen. France won the second set 25-19, and they were one win away from achieving the gold medal. So it looked as if the U.S. was basically done for. However, them being resilient as always, and them moving TJ DeFalco to opposite instead of his primary outside hitter position, they actually wound up winning the third set 25-15. And it was a risk versus reward situation, as basically it was basically a chess match, and they knew that they had their backs against the wall, and they had to basically play their guts out. So the fourth set, it was basically either way. It could have gone either way, as the U.S. was making big save after big save. Like, the whole match had big saves from the U.S. In set 4, the U.S. was able to force the fifth set by taking set 4 25-21, and it looked as if the U.S. was finally able to basically turn the tables, pull off the reverse sweep, and win their first ever gold medal in the VNL. However, France had other ideas. France basically had other plans, as France basically jumped out to a brief lead, and that lead eventually grew. They led 8-3, which was very concerning. To the credit of the U.S., they didn't give up. They worked their way down from 5 points down to 4 points down, and then they eventually got down to 3 points. Then they got down all the way to just 2 points, as they only trailed 11-9. However, France was able to use a 2-0 run of their own to lead 13-9, and the U.S. just was unable to catch up, as they wound up losing the fifth set 15-10, as France won their first ever gold medal in the VNL, in addition to winning gold medal in the previous Olympics. So congratulations to France. It was a well-fought battle between the U.S. and France. It's just that the U.S. just did not have enough in the tank to win that fifth set. Now, if they had gotten off to a better start, and if they had taken that second set, it would have been a whole different ball game. But unfortunately, that's how it goes. So the U.S. is nothing to be ashamed of. No one really expected the U.S. to really do anything, especially after that hideous showing in the Olympics. But the U.S. was able to make it all the way to the final, and they came one set away from winning their first ever gold medal in the VNL. Unfortunately, it just wasn't meant to be. The silver medal is the highest that they've gotten, and this isn't the first time the U.S. has won the silver medal. They've won it in the past. So, yeah. For the U.S., they have a lot to be proud of. I think the future looks bright. And Micah Christensen was to me one of the standout players. He joined the U.S. team late, but he was able to make a big impact. And Micah Christensen was one of the players that Nick England talked about a couple weeks ago that want to play locally instead of overseas. So for Micah Christensen to basically make his return to the U.S. and to basically almost will the U.S. to a gold medal in the VNL is quite impressive. Unfortunately, the U.S. just wasn't able to have their turn. It was France's turn to win the gold medal in the VNL. But the U.S. has a lot to be proud of. It's their third medal in 4 tries when it comes to the VNL. So I really think the U.S. is back on track. I think they're on the right track when it comes to winning certain matches in certain events on the international level. And I'm certain we will see the U.S. men's volleyball team back on the big stage, whether it's the Olympic stage or the VNL stage. In terms of the knockout round, of course. So that is going to do it for the VNL men's volleyball recap. I don't know if there's going to be a possible, like, not FIFA, but a possible, like, World Cup championship. But if there is anything of that sort, we will have to see. Regardless, that is going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point. Before we head out, there is some news regarding the U.S. women's volleyball team. And it's good news. Don't worry. It's good news. So before I close out the show, I actually forgot to give a shout to the U.S. girls U19 national team, as they actually wound up winning gold in the Pan Am Cup, as they swept all of their opponents. They did not drop one set in the Pan Am Cup. More importantly, the U.S. girls U19 team did not allow they only allowed one team to cross 20 points, which I think is very impressive. So congratulations to the U.S. U19 girls volleyball team on winning the Pan Am Cup and not dropping a set, and more importantly, only allowing one team to cross 20 points first. Now, in addition to the U.S. women's national team, the U.S. women's national team will actually be playing exhibition matchups against Turkey in California on August 27th and 28th, as well as August 30th. So, believe it or not, the U.S. is actually playing Turkey in an exhibition match on August 27th and 28th at the site being, can we get a drum roll please? Long Beach State. Of all the places, the U.S. is going to be playing at my alma mater. So I'm really excited for that. I really can't wait for that. I really got to make sure I secure my seat. I know it's an exhibition match, but honestly, I'm excited for this possible opportunity of covering the U.S. women's national team. Even if it's exhibition, I don't care. I get to meet Karch Karai. I get to meet all those talented players from the U.S. And I get to, I guess, see Turkey as well. And I'm really excited for it. I really got to secure my spot. And whether I get the opportunity to cover this as a fan or as a member of the media, I'm very excited. And I cannot wait. I cannot wait for the U.S. to play at Long Beach State. I am going to make sure I secure my spot at the media table. And then the U.S. and Turkey will play in an exhibition matchup on August 30th. This time they'll be playing in UC San Diego, which I think that's going to be fun as well, as they'll be playing at the Lion Tree Arena. Yes, the Lion Tree Arena is taking the place of the Rimac Arena, which I think is a not-so-good nickname. I love the Rimac Arena. I can't believe UC San Diego replaced Rimac with Lion Tree, but that's for another time. So that's basically your USA Women's Volleyball National Team news, as well as the girls U19 team news. Now, without any further delay, let's drop that beat, because that is going to do it for Set Point. Let's drop the beat, as I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Set Point. I really do appreciate everyone tuning in. If you listen live, I appreciate you. If you listen on the playback, I appreciate you. If you listen at work, I appreciate you. If you listen to the wee hours of the morning, I appreciate you. If you listen at any time, any place, anywhere, I appreciate you. Shout out to the Spreaker chat room, Adam Carnick, Mike Pack, John Felipe, and David Supros for tuning in. I appreciate you. I will be back Friday for SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Also, keep it locked on next Monday. Next week in general is the NBA playoffs. Keep it posted. I'll be keeping you all posted on if I'll be going to the game. It's looking like I will be attending the NBA playoffs in person. Yes, IE Sports Radio is going to be in the house for the 2022 NBA playoffs. Keep it locked on Set Point. Follow me on Twitter at set_pointie, as well as my personal account at Teran Rodriguez. For everyone here at IE Sports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. You all have yourself a great rest of the evening. Enjoy these volleyball actions. And I will be seeing you Friday for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Peace!